Tonight at 10, England and Denmark are still battling at Wembley for a place in the final of the European Championship.
It's going to be scored. It was dipping. It was delightful.
Denmark were first on the scoreboard, but England soon equalised and was still 1-1 after full time. Well, for thousands of fans in the stadium, many millions at home, they now face the tension of extra time. We'll be live at Wembley Stadium where the play continues, and we'll be looking ahead to Sunday's final, whatever happens. In tonight's other news, the latest on the lifting of COVID restrictions in England. More than 30,000 new COVID cases today, but Boris Johnson defends his controversial plan to remove restrictions. And at Wimbledon, the 8-time champion Roger Federer is out after losing his quarter-final in straight sets.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel, the end of an era. Is this the last time we see Roger Federer at Wimbledon? He's beaten in straight sets at the quarter-final stage.
Good evening. The second semi-final of the European Championship kicked off 2 hours ago at Wembley Stadium, but England and Denmark are still on the pitch, battling for a place in the final of the Euros. The match is currently in extra time after it ended 1-1 after 90 minutes or so. There have been high hopes that England, under the widely praised leadership of manager Gareth Southgate, will make it to the final of the European Championship for the very first time. So let's go live to Wembley. For the latest on what's happening, join our sports correspondent, Ollie Foster. Ollie?
Huw, 55 years waiting for a major championship final. What's another 30 minutes and possible penalties for England? This match, the semi-final against Denmark, has been exhilarating and excruciating in equal part. Yes, we've watched England grow into this tournament over the weeks. That fantastic win against Germany in the last 16 that gave them belief. That rout in Rome against Ukraine that saw them accelerating into these semi-finals. They thought they had found the fast lane to the final, but instead they have found a red wall in the shape of Denmark. It is 1-1. They're in the first period of extra time, but here's our sports editor with the story of the match so far.
They arrived not only hoping to witness history, but daring to expect it. The pain of defeat at this stage of major tournaments is a sensation many England fans have become all too familiar with, part of their team's identity. But after a campaign of rare assuredness, the sense was that this time England really could end that long quest to reach a final once again.
It's once in a lifetime, isn't it? I'll be pinching myself for weeks.
As soon as I woke up, I had butterflies in my belly. I can't wait for tonight.
If we get knocked out, I'm going to be so sad.
How would they respond to falling behind? The answer was decisive. Sterling denied by the brilliance of Kasper Schmeichel.
That was Dan Rowan, our sports editor. We'll be talking to Dan a little later on for an update on what's going on. It's still 1-1, by the way, in extra time there. England fans, of course, across the country remaining on tenterhooks as the semi-final goes on. So let's join my colleague Sian Lloyd, who's with some fans in Solihull. Sian, what's going on there?
Well, hugely tense evening here because this is where Jack Grealish went to school. So, of course, when he was brought on, there was huge excitement here. But yes, the wait not over for fans. This is how they've been enjoying the evening here so far.
Arriving for what they hope will be a night to remember. Members of this sports centre in Solihull glad to be back together. 150 members have booked in to watch the match here, excited for what could happen at Wembley. Although this mother and daughter didn't quite make it to the capital.
My husband and son are at Wembley, but we've drawn the short straw. We're here enjoying the game, watching it on the telly.
I grew up on football with my dad and brother, and I think it's just fun to be around everybody loving it.
I've gone through a roller coaster of emotions today. I was really nervous to start with, confident. Then I've gone back to being slightly circumspect about it all. We're going to win 3-1.
Feeling excited. I think it might be 2-1. England.
They watched and waited. But there came a moment of despair as Denmark scored. Then they raised the roof ahead of half-time.
I'm actually on my seat, the edge of my seat with it. It's amazing. And when they scored, it was the best thing ever.
I'm not looking forward to the second half. Never am watching England.
And around the country, fans were glued to the screen. Moments of excitement and promise in this match, but England still wait to see whether it will be enough. Sian Lloyd, BBC News, Solihull.
Tonight's scenes in Solihull with Sian Lloyd there. Let's pop back to Wembley and talk to Ollie Foster again. Ollie, just a quick reminder, it's still 1-1, I believe, in the extra time. And from your point of view, looking at the play so far, does one of the teams look more tired? I mean, what are the prospects, do you think?
England are on the front foot. Gareth Southgate has rung the changes. Jack Grealish, the impact player, came on towards the end of normal time. Phil Foden, the Manchester City starlet, he has also joined the fray, but Denmark are holding firm. Theirs is one of the stories of this championship. If they can take it all the way to penalties and perhaps prevail, then there will be huge support for them. But all the groans that have been drifting up from Wembley Way greet every half chance that England has. They are on the front foot. They've still got another 15 or 20 minutes to play in this, but you know there are echoes of all those failed semi-finals down the years. Italia 90, Euro 96, Russia 2018. I wonder if Euro 20, these delayed Euros, are going to go the same way, because at the moment it's a fairy tale of Hans Christian Andersen proportions for Denmark, but the curse of the semi-final could be coming back to strike England down. But they do have 20 minutes still left to play. There is hope.
Ollie, many thanks. Another update later, but thanks for now. Ollie Foster there in Wembley. And by the way, you can share your reaction, well, so far anyway, to tonight's game with 6:06 on BBC Radio 5 Live. And the programme is on air until midnight and can also be heard on BBC Sounds. Let's move on to the day's other news. The Prime Minister has been defending his plans to remove most of England's coronavirus restrictions in just 12 days' time, describing his approach as balanced and reasonable. But with predictions that new cases could reach 100,000 a day later this summer, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer warned that the government strategy would lead to chaos and confusion, with huge numbers of people having to self-isolate. Our Deputy Political Editor Vicky Young has more details.
When cases go up, countries have locked down. Not this time. Ministers are taking the opposite approach in England, confident vaccines will protect more of us from the worst of this third wave.
Will hospitals cope with rising COVID cases, Prime Minister?
More infections mean more people with long COVID and the risk of new variants.
Keir Starmer.
The Labour leader says we're heading for a summer of chaos and confusion.
Let's be clear why the number of cases will surge so quickly, because he is taking all protections off in one go. That is reckless. Is the Prime Minister really comfortable with a plan that means 100,000 people catching this virus every day and everything that that entails?
We will continue with a balanced and reasonable approach. And I've given the reasons. This country has rolled out the fastest vaccination programme anywhere in Europe. The vaccines provide more than 90% protection against hospitalisation.
But the owners of this tea shop in Grantchester are facing another problem. They're closed because so many staff are at home after coming into contact with an infected person. Soon people who've had both jabs won't have to isolate, but the rule's not changing until the 16th of August.
The impact on this business and all hospitality businesses like mine is devastatingly serious. We've got a ridiculous system where for the third time in the less than 15 months, this business has been shut down by the rules of this government. And that's not fair and it can't continue.
Frustration shared by senior MPs quizzing Mr Johnson this afternoon.
Is it the case that until we get to that point on the 16th of August, people who have been jabbed twice will have to isolate even if they've had a negative COVID test?
We're asking people to isolate. I know how frustrating it is. But
why?
Because we have to. I'm afraid this is a highly contagious disease, and we have to do what we can to stop its spread.
You can hear a contradiction at the heart of the Prime Minister's message. He's lifting almost all restrictions, but still urging caution. Gone is the euphoric language describing Freedom Day. Instead, it's clear that this pandemic is far from over. Normal life is returning, but the pattern of this pandemic so far suggests some difficult weeks ahead. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's take a look at the latest official figures. They show within the past 24 hours, 33 deaths were reported and 32,548 new infections were recorded across the UK, the highest number since the 22nd of January. There's been an average of 27,557 new cases per day in the UK last week. Almost 86,000 people received a first dose of the vaccine in the latest 24-hour period. More than 45.5 million people have now had their first jab. That's 86.4% of UK adults. Over 153,000 people have had their second dose. So more than 34 million people are now fully vaccinated. That's 64.6% of UK adults. Now, the World Health Organization has urged extreme caution when governments plan to ease restrictions because of a surge in new cases, even in countries with good vaccination rates, such as the UK. The organisation's head of emergencies, Dr. Mike Ryan, said that the idea of letting people get infected with COVID-19 earlier rather than later was a case of stupidity. Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, examines how big the third wave of infections could be.
Despite increasing levels of vaccination, coronavirus cases are doubling in the UK roughly every 9 days. So how protected are we? The Office for National Statistics estimates that 89% of adults now have antibodies against coronavirus. The levels vary around the UK but are the highest so far during the pandemic. Antibodies will either be the result of prior infection or increasingly vaccination. But having some antibodies is not a guarantee against getting infected.
A lot of these adults will have antibodies, but there'll be low levels of antibodies. There'll be waning antibodies from their original live infection. What we need for full protection from something like the Delta variant is the kind of high-level neutralizing antibodies that you get from 2 doses of vaccine.
So how big will the third wave be? The government estimates that cases could rise from current levels to 50,000 a day by the 19th of July and perhaps 100,000 a day later in the summer. What really matters is the number of people who become seriously ill, and immunisation is ensuring a lower proportion of people are being admitted to hospital. Even so, there could be 1,000 hospital admissions a day later this month and perhaps double that if cases spiral upward.
I do think that other places in Europe and the world are going to see the UK as a bit of a test case here, to test exactly how effective the vaccines are at a fairly high but not complete vaccine rollout stage, and to see whether this triggers, for example, the arising of new variants that are under pressure to get around that vaccine protection.
So how many people might have to self-isolate in the coming weeks? For every COVID case, around 3 close contacts are identified. Now, these are very rough estimates, but if we hit 50,000 cases a day, that could mean nearly 1.5 million people a week being ordered to self-isolate. And if we hit 100,000 cases a day by the 16th of August, the date at which the self-isolation rules are being relaxed, it could be nearer 3 million people a week. Tomorrow, ministers are expected to announce a date when fully immunised people arriving in England from amber list countries will no longer have to quarantine. It would open up travel to many tourist destinations and spark a scramble for holiday bookings. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Well, now things have changed in the England-Denmark encounter at Wembley. Let's go back to Ollie Foster, who will tell us what's been going on. Ollie?
Huw, perhaps England's semi-final curse is lifting. They're still playing the first period of extra time. The video assistant took an age to agree with the referee that Raheem Sterling had been tripped. Up stepped the captain, Harry Kane, to take the penalty in 55 years. It is a nail-biter.
Ollie, thanks very much. Back again if there's something more to report. Thanks very much there, Ollie Foster. Well, now then, it's been confirmed in some of the day's other news that the extra £20 a week, which was added to universal credit during the pandemic, will be phased out in the autumn, despite calls from many MPs to keep it in place. Our political correspondent, Nick Eardley, is at Westminster. Nick, what's been going on here?
Well, Huw, this extra payment has been seen as a lifeline to many people during the pandemic. It's a lot of money. It's more than £1,000 a year, and for some claimants, that's 5% of their household income. But ministers have been making clear today that they have no intention of extending the extra money beyond October when it's due to end. That's in part down to cost. It's £6 billion a year, the Treasury estimates. And as Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, tries to get a grip on the public finances, Boris Johnson has made clear he thinks that the priority should be better paid jobs rather than welfare. Many people see that as far too simplistic though, and I think the Prime Minister is going to face considerable pressure on this in the next few weeks, not just from opposition MPs as you would expect, but also from Conservatives. We have 6 former Tory working pension secretaries saying that the uplift should be made permanent. We have a number of Tory backbenchers, some of whom won their seats for the first time in 2019 from Labour, who are nervous about the impact of this policy. It's worth remembering this is a government that's made some pretty big U-turns over the course of the pandemic. For now, Boris Johnson's policy is that as the restrictions end, so too should some of these benefits.
Nick, many thanks for the update there. Nick Eardley at Westminster. The president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, has been assassinated at his home in the capital, Port-au-Prince. The government said that the property was stormed overnight by unidentified armed men. Mr. Moïse had been in power since 2017. His critics had accused him of corruption and he'd faced waves of often violent protests. Our North America correspondent, Sophie Long, sent this report.
Haiti is a country in chaos, where acts of everyday life have come to pose a mortal risk. Accused of corruption and extending his presidency illegally, Jovenel Moïse faced mass protests and demands from the opposition to step down. The interim Prime Minister described the assassination, which came after weeks of escalating violence, as a heinous, inhuman and barbaric act, and declared a state of emergency. Still recovering from the devastating earthquake of 2010 and a hurricane that struck 6 years later, parts of the country remain inaccessible, besieged by territorial battles between heavily armed gangs, violence that's forced more than 13,000 to flee their homes. Yet the police have been largely invisible, the government silent. Now the calls for the international community to act are getting louder.
You need a lot more information, but it's very worrisome about the state of Haiti.
Does the US have a role in...
With COVID cases surging in a country where the few hospital beds are often shared by strangers and vaccinations are almost unheard of, the sense of insecurity on the streets, where food and fuel is becoming increasingly difficult to find, has now intensified. The shooting of the president and his wife, proof that no one is safe. Sophie Long, BBC News.
More than 200 bonfires have been built in Northern Ireland ahead of the annual 12th of July celebrations this year, and they're getting bigger than ever. The Loyalist tradition, which celebrates the victory of a Protestant king over a Catholic king at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, has frequently caused tensions between communities in some areas. But for others, it's an important way to celebrate British culture in Northern Ireland. Our correspondent Emma Vardy has been to see one of the bonfires being built.
Layer upon layer, built by hand, this bonfire has grown into gigantic proportions. The much prized structure has been constructed by the community in Craigie Hill, and they're hoping it'll be the largest bonfire in Northern Ireland.
It's roughly at the moment about 70 feet, so we're hoping to get maybe 120.
What's the secret to building a bonfire like this?
Top secret.
What's no secret is that this is precarious work. Bonfire builders scale its height to add more pallets on top. It's more than 250 pallets tall.
For the guys who go right on top there, are they just the most experienced or the fittest, or?
Most of the people that's working at it here have been at it since they were kids.
And the next generation are already learning.
We were like helping build the base and stuff. We're hitting for a world record.
Going for a record?
Yeah.
Usually pallets are passed up the bonfire by hand, but today they have some assistance.
Well, this is a pretty serious construction project, and the community have raised £20,000 for all those pallets to make it happen. It's a great source of pride. It's a statement of identity. Every year, bonfires will also cause a bit of contention.
Community representatives in North Belfast are trying to calm tensions over a bonfire which has been built at an interface between a mainly Protestant and mainly Catholic area. And political leaders have condemned a bonfire in Portadown, where election posters were burnt, along with Irish and Palestinian flags.
That's clearly promotion of hate, and I think there's a huge job of work to be done in order to bring these more provocative acts to an end.
But this bonfire in Craigiehill gets support regarding safety from the local council and receives funding to hold a family day for children before it goes up in flames.
And it's just part of the culture we carry on, and we want to retain that culture.
Some of the bonfires will burn the Irish flag. What do you say about those bonfires that people will argue can cause offence?
Well, that goes on both sides. On the 15th of August, you'll get a bonfires on the Catholic side. They'll put flags up and they'll burn things. It's just the way things are here, you know.
Symbolic of the strongly held traditions in loyalist areas of Northern Ireland that, far from diminishing with time, are this year larger than ever. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Larne.
Let's get today's tennis news. Roger Federer's campaign for a 9th Wimbledon title was ended today when he was knocked out in straight sets by Poland's Huw Edwards, who has reached his first Grand Slam semi-final. But the defending champion, Novak Djokovic, sailed into the semi-finals, where he will play the 10th seed Denis Shapovalov on Friday. Our sports correspondent, Joe Wilson, was watching the day's action.
All may imagine it, precious few reach it, even once. Only one man has won Wimbledon 8 times. Roger Federer has unmatched history here, but nothing stands still. Poland's Huw Edwards seeded 14, moving in for a winner, and the set followed 6-3. The second set went to a tiebreak, and at points when it seemed Federer was poised to strike back.
Oh, he slipped!
He is 39, he is human. Still a shock to see it. Second set to Edwards. Now Federer was trying to summon something, but finding nothing.
He's dragged it down into the net.
Centre court rose before the end, as if to be sure they could do this one more time. Federer had prioritised Wimbledon, tried to be ready, but with the starkest score, 6-love, he was out.
Magnificent demolition of a great champion.
And will Federer ever be back here?
I don't know. I really don't know. I got to regroup, you know. Of course, I would like to play it again, you know, but at my age, you're just never sure what's around the corner.
It's not simply a case of counting Roger Federer's victories here. His whole style of play, his demeanour, raised tennis to a different level. And the prospect of life without him, well, it does seem a bit empty. Edwards joins Djokovic, Shapovalov and Berrettini in the semi-finals. Federer's next move is his decision. Joe Wilson, BBC News, Wimbledon.
Right, before we go, just time to go back for a quick trip to Wembley again, and Ollie Foster's there with the latest for us. Ollie?
Huw, England are 10 minutes away from the European Championship final. They're into the second period of extra time. It looks as though, as it stands, they have avoided penalties. Just the penalty from the captain, Harry Kane, in the first, have played their part to the hilt here. Theirs has been a fantastic story. Remember their stricken star player, Christian Eriksen, who collapsed with a cardiac arrest. He is watching on, recovering at home. They've been playing for him, but England have blocked out all emotion. It has been a thoroughly professional job. They've made changes. They're trying to see this match out now. 10 minutes from the Euro final.
We shall see. Ollie, thanks very much again for the updates. Ollie Foster there for us at Wembley, and that's it from us. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.